Okay, let's see. Dashboard. All right, let's get this set up. Can you guys hear me? All right, sounds good. Okay, so I'm going to give it a minute or two to see if anybody else is going to show up. And then after that, we will get started. Okay, let's see. So we got a couple of people here. I don't need this. I can get rid of that. Okay. All right. Probably turn this down. Tiny bit better. Okay. So we'll start in. I'll give it another 2 or 3 minutes, and then we can get started. Okay. So everyone who is here already, I hope you guys are doing all right. Hope you're having a good day so far. Good morning to you too, sir. All right. Just give it another couple minutes. All right, looks like we got a couple of people hopping on. Okay. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but the air conditioning is going on in the background. So if you guys can hear that, I apologize. I know it's a bit annoying, but if not, then I guess that's fine. Okay. All right, so I guess we'll get started here. So, welcome to the very first Old Guy Vibes live on YouTube. I went live on Instagram a few months ago, but this is the first time that I've ever gone live on YouTube specifically. So, I guess we'll see how it goes and let's have a good time. So, I should let you guys know that this could last 2 hours or it could last 2 minutes. It depends how much I have to talk about and how many questions you guys have for me, if any at all. So, keep them coming if you have anything to ask. Now is the time to get those burning questions out of your system. So the live chat will be up and running the whole time on my end. So feel free to ask away whenever you guys are ready. Okay. And then I do apologize for not posting a normal video this week. I've been busy with a lot of work stuff. So I've been trying to find some time, and it's just not really been working out. All right. Somebody asked, why did you delete all the old stuff? I didn't delete any of it. It still exists. I've unlisted it because I have. So I want to one, refine the focus of my channel so that I actually have a consistent um, subject matter. Uh, but the other reason is because I don't want to have an excessive amount of misinformation on my channel so that people think that something is credible and then it's not. So instead of making a separate video saying this video was wrong and then this is what's correct, but then these things in that video were also right, but then these things were wrong, and then having an individual video debunking each other individual video is just kind of excessive and takes a lot of time. And I would rather just unlist it and redo it without having to be like, I got these individual facts wrong, these are the correct facts, but then the rest of this video is right, kind of thing. So I'd rather just redo the video at higher quality anyway. All right, so I also have, all right, I know the focus is mostly on civilian clothing, but have you ever thought about getting into vintage military uniforms between the Georgian and the Edwardian era? I have considered it, but I don't I don't know whether I would actually go through with it, just because to interpret both civilian and military at the same time just doubles the amount of expenses and the amount of stuff that I would physically have in my wardrobe. Not to mention, I would have to go through with civilian. I just have to buy the clothes. With military, I have to buy the equipment and the weaponry and all that kind of stuff. Because there's no point in doing a military cosplay if you don't, you know, have the equipment to go with it. Because then you're only wearing half of the uniform. So I need to buy the weapons. I would need to buy the equipment and all that kind of stuff. I have thought about doing Civil War, just because that's kind of like the American thing to do in that era. But it's not that expensive. But I would have to. I don't know anything about uh, military activity, not active, but like military procedures or anything like that. So, and there's no, as a Yankee, I would want to join a Union regiment, not a Confederate regiment. So, but there isn't one in Texas because it's Texas, it's the South. So I was thinking about doing Civil War, but I can't really do that. Otherwise, I'm not particularly interested in doing Continental Army or 1812. And in the United States, there wasn't much conflict between the Civil War and the First World War, other than the Indian Wars, which is more like not really a war kind of thing. All right, let's see. Hello to you too. I loved the waistcoat sewing video. Do you have any upcoming sewing projects? No, I don't. Um, after after doing the waistcoat, I think I have deterred myself from ever wanting to do another sewing project ever again. That may just be because jumping into the deep end with something as complicated as a waistcoat might have not been the best idea, but I don't like it. It doesn't feel like something that I could that I really. It was fun, but not the kind. It's like watching a movie that's good the first time, but not so great the second time. Uh, it was fun to do the first time, but it was also an enormous amount of headache and not the kind of thing that seems worth doing again, in my opinion. Um, would you attend living history events at historic sites and maybe film it? I could, like physically, I could, but living history events don't happen very often for the group that I'm part of. Uh, I did do, I did do the siege and battle of Behar the other month in December, and that was fun. But the group that I'm a part of, one, we're based in Texas, specifically the San Antonio area. So there's not much physical living history to be a backdrop for filming a video of going to an event. It's not like the Northeast or the East Coast where there's a lot of forts and preserved areas in cities and towns. So it's more like one building surrounded by a bunch of modern development. so it's kind of hard to film stuff and have it actually look nice. But also, we only have that one or two events every year, so it would be if I did go to a living history event and film the event, it wouldn't exactly be a regular occurrence, but I could physically do that, yes, and I think that could be fun as well. But speaking of living history, the group that I'm a part of, the San Antonio Living History Association, on February 10th from 10 to 12 in the morning, we are going to be having a regular monthly demonstration and meet and greet. And as far as I'm aware, at the moment, my schedule for that day is open and I should be able to attend. So if you would like to meet me in person and just say hi, or if you'd like to check out some San Antonio living history, or if you'd like to even join us, we will be at the Mission Branch Library in San Antonio, Texas, uh, on February 10th at 10 a.m. Just if anybody is in Texas and is interested. Um, but that should be fun. And oh, as well, if you guys, when you watch my videos, if you have any topics that you would like me to cover in my videos that are anything specific that you haven't seen from me, uh, or anything that I did before, but you particularly want to see done again, let me know in the comments, or you can comment on my Instagram posts or anything like that. But just let me know which videos you guys would like to see so that I know what is in highest demand that I can prioritize to produce, or if there's a topic that I haven't thought of that you guys want me to cover as well. Which era does your living history group focus on? We focus on the conflict over Texas independence. So the war between uh, the residents of Mexican Texas fighting for independence against the Mexican army, which is around, it's like the mid 1830s, mid to late 1830s is really the era that we focus on. Slightly the 1820s, but mainly 1830s or so, and sort of into the 1840s, but not really. And so the group that I'm a part of also is mainly the Mexican army side. Now I portray a civilian, so I just play myself in costume, and we're kind of still figuring out a lot of what we're going to focus on, what we're going to do, setting up events, and setting up how things are going to work. So it's kind of what I'm going to be doing specifically is still a little bit up in the air. But we have a lot of plans, and it's going to be mainly focused around Texas independence and that kind of era. What do I think about 1920s era men's clothing? I do like the 1920s, but it is not my favorite because I'm not a big fan of slim fit, and that was kind of the big thing of like the new fashion of the 20s was slim fit fashion. Um, Now I do like the way the silhouette is formed and the materials and the patterns and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I love high waisted. I love cuffs. I love uh, well fitted jackets with big lapels and all that kind of stuff. And I do like how the 1920s was the transition period from the sort of that like Edwardian remnant of the Victorian style into the current style. But excuse me. But I do prefer like the 1930s and 40s where it has like the big shoulder pads and the really wide lapels and the really wide pants legs. Just because that's I don't know, I just like that style a bit better. But I do like the 1920s. So if I had the a reason or the time and the money to invest in 20s clothing, then I would totally do that. I do, however, like the cars from the 1920s. That's my favorite era for for cars. I don't know anything about cars. I just like the way that they look. But in short, yes. But I do I do like 1820s as well. Somebody asked. But the problem that I see with the 1820s for me personally is that the silhouette of the 1820s was so excessive and extra. It's right in between the Regency era and the late Romantic era. So, like, the Regency era goes from 1800 to 1815, whereas the Romantic era goes from 1815 to 1860 or 1859. Uh, and 1820 is right in the middle of that, and it's got all that excessive dandification, I guess you could say, of the Regency era, but then with, like, the specific items that belong to the Romantic era. So, no you've got things like, you know, you've got the full fronted frock coats, you've got, full length trousers, you've got really tall top hats, but it's all super duper exaggerated with, like, the super puffy shoulders and the really tight, uh, wrists and, like, the really flared jacket skirts and, like, the really, like, super flared top hats and, the really, like, peg-shaped trousers and all that kinda stuff. And to me, that's just super duper excessive, and it's not really my thing. I prefer more towards, like, the late 1830s, 1840s, where it sort of, you know, tones down a bit. But I don't have a problem with the 1820s, it's just not really my favorite. Do I watch Peaky Blinders? No, I do not. That sort of era is interesting to me, like, I watched Downton Abbey and all that, but, I have yet to get into Peaky Blinders specifically. I probably should. Like, everybody else seems to like it, but I don't know, I've never sat down and felt like, I need to watch Peaky Blinders." But maybe I should, I think that could be fun. I don't know how accurate it is, but I've heard some good things about it, so that's good at least. And I'm not very knowledgeable on that era though, so I couldn't give much of an informed opinion on the accuracy of it if I do watch it. Uh, do you plan on making a post or video going into detail about your lighter summer attire? Currently researching the usage of lighter suits in the Philippines as a history major. So that's pretty cool. Are you in the Philippines or just researching the Philippines as a place to research? Because that's pretty cool. I don't know much about fashion in other countries. I know that at a certain point, fashion from the West started to influence the rest of the world, and by the modern era, regional fashion kind of has dwindled quite a bit. But at the beginning and like the first half of the 19th century, I know that regional fashion still existed, and cultural fashions were still very big in a lot of places. So I don't know much about the Philippines specifically, but I can make a video about summer attire in particular because I can give examples from the beginning and the end of the 19th century. But it's not a very complicated topic. The short version is it's the same thing that you would wear in the winter, just with lighter weight fabrics that can breathe. Um, that's obviously not all of it, but as far as Western fashion goes, it's not the most complicated subject matter. But I can definitely make a video about that. That does sound like a good idea, especially here in Texas. But I'll have to wait till the summer. Excuse me. I'll have to wait till the summer for that because I can't, like, even in Texas, it gets cold in the winter. So I can't wear any of that stuff until it starts to get warmer. But that sounds like a fun idea. Okay. Let's see. Did I miss anybody? Hmm. Oh, that being said, though, to expand on that, a lot of summer fashion that we focus on for the 19th and early 20th century is coming from countries like the United Kingdom or France or Germany or, places in Northern and Central Europe. So, and like the northeast of the United States. So those fashions come from climates that are much colder in the winter and much more mild and temperate in summer, especially if you look at the UK and northern France and Germany. Um, Summers tend not to reach much higher than, 80 degrees Fahrenheit or, 85 degrees Fahrenheit, if that. And, that's like a hot day. But if you look at, the fashions of the southern United States where it gets to the 90s in Fahrenheit, or, even in Texas where it gets to 105 on a regular basis, or if you look at places like the south of France, Italy, uh, Greece, Spain, you get a slightly different angle and view of what people wear, and it's kind of a different culture. While it's largely similar and kind of the same stuff, that's really where fabric and color starts to play a major role. Do I like any fashions of the 80s? Mm, a little bit. I mean, I do kind of like power suits. Like every now and then I'm in a mood where I'm like, it'd be cool to wear a power suit, but it's definitely not something that I would focus on. Like if I had to choose between an 80s power suit and a 1940s suit with shoulder pads, it's similar, but I would go with the 1940s pretty much every time. But that's not to say I don't like the 80s. That being said, I don't, I would, like I said, I would choose anything pre 1960s over anything post 1960s. I'll put it that way. But that's just me. I don't have a problem with the 80s. And the same thing goes with my music taste. I don't know if, like, some of you guys might know that I'm a musician, and, 80s music, or really music after the 1960s, I will always choose music before the 1960s over after the 1960s. I don't know what it is. I consider the 1960s to be the transition uh from traditional to modern fashion in the West. I mean, just me personally. Yes, unless it's metal. I do prefer modern metal. Um, but I don't know, for some reason I just think of the '60s as the transition to modern fashion. So I just never really liked fashion or music or most cultural concepts after the 1960s, really. All right. Peaky Blinders is interesting on several points. Story is good, acting is good, but most interesting to me was how the styles developed from after World War One to during World War Two. Oh, so it reaches World War Two. Okay, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. I thought it was just kind of like 1910s, 1920s. Um, but that does sound pretty cool. I think I'll take a look into it. But yes, from so World War One was a huge influence on the development of fashion, and that's one of the reasons why the 1920s is so different from the 1910s, was because of the major cultural shift from the 1910s to World War One to the 1920s. And then after the 1920s, the Great Depression was another major influence on fashion because it was another cultural shift that then led to World War Two. And so it is really interesting how those cultural shifts affect fashion and culture and all that kind of stuff. Well, obviously they do because it's cultural shift. Favorite style of overcoat. I don't know if I have a favorite style, but of the overcoats in my wardrobe, I do have a favorite, which is my naval bridge coat or officer's coat. Which, if you don't know what that is a great coat for the Navy. So it's navy blue, basically black, with the double breasted with the gold buttons, but it's full length, so it's reaches halfway down the shin, and it's made of extremely heavyweight, durable wool. So the drape is really good, and it's got a lot. It's nice and heavy, uh, and it's just about the warmest outerwear layer that I've ever put on. Uh, Now, it's not accurate to any of the eras that I dress, but it is military issue, so it's like the actual thing, and it's just a really good coat. but I don't know what my favorite would be if I could choose any in the world from any era. Would you consider narrating stories about other aspects of Victorian era life and culture done in character? I'm not a very good actor. So, done in character, I would have to say probably not. But um I I do like other aspects of it of Victorian life other than culture or other than fashion. I just don't know very much about the non-fashion side of things. But I love watching videos about things like holidays and how they celebrated them, or jobs that people did and how they were done, or just general cultural experiences. Like I love watching videos and hearing stories about a regular person just going about their life from waking up to going to bed and what they would do in their day. So that kind of stuff, like other cultural aspects, do interest me other than fashion. I just don't know anything about it, at least not enough to speak as an authority. Um, Purely out of speculation, would you be aware if there's a correlation between the balloon sleeves of the early Renaissance and the slightly puffed shoulders of the Regency era coats and jackets? Are you referring to like the um like when there's slits in the fabric so the sleeves can push through, or like those like round things on the shoulder? I mean, to answer your question, I don't know much about Renaissance fashion. I don't really know much about fashion prior to the late 18th century. I mean, like my knowledge kind of ends with the Black Death and begins again with the Regency era. But I would say fashion goes in waves, so things go in and out of fashion repeatedly. So it could just be that having something on your shoulders to accentuate your shoulders has always been a fashionable thing in one form or another, but it sort of goes in and out, like just like it does within the 19th century. So that would be my guess, but I don't know if there's any direct correlation. But it could just be that that's a thing that people like the look of, and sort of have gone in and out of throughout the eras. Is that would be my guess. Um, okay, so continuing the question from before, if I worked from scripts, I do. I do sometimes write scripts for my videos. At least I have in the past, but those videos are harder to produce because all the visual elements have to be done in post. I can't just sit down and record a live video and then edit that video and then just put a B-roll of pictures like I usually do. I would have to do 100% pictures, which would require a lot more. I would have to find a lot more photos, and I would have to do a lot more editing to get it all together. So those kinds of like scripted videos take a lot more effort because I don't have a teleprompter. I can't just put a script behind the camera because then I would kind of be just not looking at the camera the whole time. So I have to do all the script work pure audio, which just makes the editing process take forever and it's much harder. I have to find more pictures. So I do sometimes try to do that, but it's just much more difficult. And I'm actually working on a video right now that's exactly like that. Um, but it's just taking forever, and I'm kind of procrastinating on that one. But the short version is yes, I don't mind working from a script. Okay, let me see if I missed anybody. Don't think so. Okay. So, oh, another thing. So I don't know if you guys are much interested in this, but I was considering getting into uh Wild West kind of clothing. Obviously not gimmicky Wild West, but like the true nature of Western American clothing and sort of, from the beginning of expansion in the 1840s through the industrialization of the West in the 1890s, and sort of go into how, like, just living in Texas, that's kind of part of local history. So, what do you guys think about that sort of era in addition to regular traditional fashion of the era? Thank you. Okay. Thank you, sir. Yes, it will add some more ruggedness for sure. And it'll give me an excuse to buy more clothing if I didn't need that already. So that'll be fun on both ends. But I just feel like that's an era that gets heavily misrepresented, especially in, like, you can look at a photograph, like, you can physically look at a photograph of an actual person from the actual time and still get the wrong idea of what people wore. And so to me, the wet like and because of how Western movies tend to be done, uh, because of, like, the whole spaghetti Western genre, and because of the '50s, not and John Wayne, and, not really understanding fashion at the time because of the lack of information that was readily available, you know, a lot of movies and shows get it way wrong, and nobody's out there correcting it. There's a channel actually called the Arizona Ghost Riders, I believe is what they're called, and they focus entirely on the Wild West, and they do a pretty good job. But even then, it's very hard to properly represent that era, and I think it'd be good to really understand what that was like. You said you have a military greatcoat. Do you like trench coats? Uh, that was inspired by World War I. I do like trench coats. I don't know what the difference is between a World War I trench coat and a later trench coat, but I do have a couple of trench coats, um, and I think they're great. I wear them more for, like, the 1940s, 1950s kind of styles, and just, as a modern alternative for a raincoat. But I do like trench coats. Yes, I do. I prefer wool greatcoats, though. I think wool is one of the greatest fabrics in existence. Let me see. Seeing that you're from Texas, which, yes, that is correct. Well, not from Texas, but I live in Texas. I don't suppose you would consider purchasing antique or reproduction percussion guns to add to your planned Western attire. Um, the problem with buying antique or reproduction firearms, especially from that era, is that, one, the antiques tend to be in terrible condition and are not usable and are more wall hangers. And, being in Texas, if I'm gonna own a firearm, I'm gonna take it to the range. But the reproductions are hyper expensive. Not more expensive than any other firearm, really, unless you get a super fancy, complicated one. Uh, but it's still a lot of money, you know, into the thousands of dollars. So that's a big investment for much further down the line if I were to ever get that fancy. But um, I mean, more recent stuff you can buy originals and it still works. Um, but I don't know if I would go out of my way to buy any percussion cap firearms just yet. Not that would be like a down the line when I have more money kind of thing. Uh, I'd like to see how much the old West Hollywood gets wrong. Uh, you, I don't know if it's surprising or unsurprising, but quite a bit. If you're talking like the 1950s and 60s when that sort of like Western mania came about, um, then yes, quite a bit. Um, Pretty much anything that you see in a John Wayne movie is probably wrong. Um, but the whole reason that came about was because of the whole scramble for the Sun Belt, because everybody wanted to move to California and Texas and Florida and kind of get away from the colder climates. And, that sort of brought about that Western mania, plus the rise of country music and all that kind of stuff. So it's more influenced by the the costumes and the culture of Western movies at the time is more influenced by the existing modern at the time uh, southern and Western culture more so than it is by actual history. Uh, have I visited the Arabia Steamboat Museum? I have not. Is that the one that has that shoe collection? Oh no, that's a different one. I don't know if I've heard of the Arabia, but I have not visited. There's a lot of museums in the world that I want to go to. So there's a very long list that is being added to. But if I do get a chance, it does sound pretty interesting. Okay, that might be the one I'm thinking of because I know there is a steamboat it was a riverboat that sank and was ended up getting covered by mud or something like that. And so there were hundreds of shoes that were trapped inside and very well preserved from the 1850s. So if that might be the one that I'm thinking of, if that's the case. So that would be pretty cool if that's the boat. Um, but I love museums like that have like fully reconstructed ships or fully preserved buildings and things like that. Are you learning or speaking other languages, more specifically Latin and French, as befitting a gentleman of the eras you portray? This to sort of add to your 1800s persona. I did learn French in middle school and high school, so I remember a little bit from that, but no Latin. I could not care less about Latin, to be honest. No offense if you're a Latin speaker or a Latin file, but it's just not my thing. And it's kind of a pointless language to learn if you're not religious or in the legal sphere. But I do speak a little. I do remember a little bit of the French that I learned. But living in Texas and working in retail and now transitioning to construction, I will. I do. I have been picking up some Spanish, which is actually useful for the era that I portray in Texas because Texas was a Mexican province at the time. So Spanish was one of the two dominant languages, um, and technically the national language of the area prior to 1845, really. Um, so I have been picking up a little bit of Spanish, and I do remember a tiny bit of French, but that's it. I'm not really going out of my way to learn any languages or anything. Um, oh, okay. So that is the ship that I'm thinking of from earlier. So yes, I think I referenced it in one of my old unlisted videos. So that would be that would be pretty cool. I'd definitely like to go see that. Okay. I'm realizing I should have had a water bottle with me because my throat is getting very dry. But okay. Now remember, like I said before, guys. Well, I don't know if all of you were here at the beginning, but this Q&A session will only last as long as there are questions to be asked. So it could go on for another half an hour, or it could go on for another minute. But essentially until I run out of things to talk about. Okay. Let me think. Did I miss anybody? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Now I should give you guys a heads up. I know that there's only 9 of you on this video right now, but that's 9 more that are aware. Pretty soon I'm only going to have weekends available with for time off. So making videos is going to be pretty, and it's if I put all my focus into it, it's going to be taking up all of my weekend time. So it might I might be a little slower, or not slow. I couldn't get any slower to producing videos, but it's going to be a lot of it's not going to get any faster, and it's going to be a lot of effort. So just be aware of that coming up. Have I ever had any interest in 1700s clothing? I have had an interest, but when I was a kid, that was my favorite era before it became the Victorian era. Um, but I do still have a little bit of that interest in, and every now and then I go through a phase where I'm like, man, I really wish I had a pirate cosplay, uh, but not enough to put in the money because it would be a lot of money. At least $1,500, if not 2,000 or more, has gone into my, probably more than that, has gone into my 1840s cosplay. Uh, so a pretty similar amount would have to go into an 18th century cosplay. And the other issue is that I prefer the early 18th century, the first half, over the second half. The difference being, like the second half was much slimmer, more refined, not as poofy and exaggerated, whereas the first half was much more had a lot of excessiveness in the size of the garments and things like that, which is what I prefer. So and that stuff is much harder to find and much more expensive. So that would be another down the line kind of thing if I ever had a lot of money and a lot of time. But I do have a little bit of an interest, yes, but also not enough to really know what I'm talking about. Riding attire, it depends what you mean. If you mean modern riding attire, I have absolutely no interest in that, really. But if you're talking about like traditional riding attire, like like red morning coats and white breeches and all that kind of stuff, I don't have much of an interest in that specifically. But really, all attire was riding attire back in the day. That's why frock coats and town coats have a center vent, which is, it's called a vent now, but back in the day it was called a riding split for that very reason, because everybody was on a horse or could potentially be on a horse at any given time. And that's why, a lot of cowboys wore boots that went outside of their pants as well, even though they weren't any, they're not like fancy British style riding boots, but they were intended for riding and all that kind of stuff. So if you mean like casual riding attire like that, I'm sure I do have an interest, but not like specific, fox hunting or modern riding attire. Not really. Would you ever consider doing a video on how much the fashion of Western culture influenced other cultures, i.e., the indigenous peoples of North America? I mean, I don't know much about that. I know what I learned in history class, but I would say I could do some research into that and see what I can find. But I don't know enough about that at the moment to make a video, so I'd have to do a little bit of research. But yes, that would be a good idea for a video. How do I study about my fashion knowledge? A lot of it comes from other experts. So, uh, watching other people's videos, or you know, um, talking to other experts, or it comes from researching firsthand accounts, or not firsthand accounts, but primary sources. So photographs and what are they called? Fashion plates, illustrations, paintings. Um, you know, I've looked at books with patterns from like period patterns in like books full of patterns, or advertisements, things like that. And you'd be surprised how much you can figure out just from looking at illustrations and photographs of the time. But the problem with looking at things like fashion plates and advertisements and illustrations is that they show you the newest fashion of the time, the most fashionable changes in silhouettes, things that are just coming out. Obviously, not everybody wears what's on a fashion plate immediately when a decade starts or when a year starts. And, even if you're ultra rich, somebody might, I'm sure some people kept up with the annual fashions or even the seasonal fashions, but most people didn't. So, really, a lot of it is inference based on what is the current fashion and what were the fashions before it, and how long do garments usually physically last, and how much do people attempt to preserve what they've already got, and how much can people alter what they have to keep up with the fashions and things like that. So it's a lot of it is looking at primary sources like photographs and illustrations, but a lot of it is also inference based on those photographs from prior knowledge that I already have from other sources, and just understanding the development of fashion through history. So it's a very complicated process internally, but that's pretty much how I go about it. Let me see. I just learned something new. Very nice. That's kind of that's why I'm here. Um, yeah, vintage clothing is 100% an investment. And actually, if I can find something that's original, it's probably cheaper than if I get a reproduction. But finding anything original and that also fits me is few and far between. There are plenty of original garments out there, even from the early 1800s, especially from the late 1800s, even. But the problem is, I am right in between the sizes that things tend to be. They either tend to be so small that they don't fit any adult from the modern era, or they tend to be made for adults that are larger than me, um, width wise, or shorter than me, height wise. Because I'm tall and slim. I'm not, excessively tall or excessively slim, but I'm tall enough and slim enough that it's hard to find things in my exact size, because that's I'm built like the average person from back in the day. So all that stuff would have been completely worn out and, worn until it was rags, or has already been bought up by people like me who can't find their size. So it's hard for me to find things that are original and in my size. So I have to do a lot of reproductions, and reproductions are very expensive and take a long time to arrive. Uh, so I do. It is very much an investment. Um, Before I finally return to the university work that besets me, I'd just like to ask, do you plan on doing any videos or posts about the usage of straw and leaves for the different hats of the 1800s? Um, Leaves, I don't know about. That's new on me. Straw, I did mention straw top hats in my top hat video. So I can make a video. So if somebody asked earlier about doing a video dedicated to summer clothing and fabrics, so I can talk about straw in that video if you would like. I don't know if there's enough to talk about to make it a dedicated video, or maybe I just don't know enough to make it a dedicated video. But yes, yeah, like Panama hats. Um, I don't know what that second one is, or straw top hats. Yes, I can make a video about straw, or I can put it in a video about summer attire. But with as far as straw hats go, it's really just the same hats as felt hats, just made from straw. Like you've got straw top hats, you've got straw uh what do you call them? Like round hats, like just standard round crown, flat brim. Uh, you have straw Panama hats, which is just straw fedora, boater hats. Um, so maybe I just don't know enough, but I could. It's not a very complicated topic. I feel like, but I can definitely talk about that in a future video. That is an interesting topic that I think does deserve sort of like a dedicated spot. Um, I don't know. I don't know what that second hat is that you referenced. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it just in case I get it wrong, but I'll have to Google that. Let's see. All right. So let's go for about another 9 minutes or so, just so we can get to an hour. And then that should be good. I think we'll wrap it up after that. But excuse me. I think you guys have asked some pretty good questions so far. I'm pretty happy with I'm not sure what I was expecting as far as questions go, but I'm very happy with a lot of them are very unique and interesting questions. So I'm very appreciative of that. Oh, here's an idea. So I was thinking for a while of as a classical singer, I was thinking of maybe posting content of my music, but singing or performing music the from like classical music and music from the 19th century or from before the 19th century, but in like 19th century attire. So what do you guys think about that idea? I don't know how many of you are actually into classical music. Yes, I still do. Well, once you learn the guitar, you never unlearn it. So yes, I still play the guitar. Um, so if you'd like more guitar music, like I posted a Shokin Farewell, I can do more stuff like that for sure. Puccini, I could definitely. I don't know any of his songs, uh, but I could definitely have a listen, see if I can find some sheet music, and do some Puccini. Do I have a favorite military style? Hmm, I'm not too sure because I really like World War One, like the doughboy style, but like with the putties and flannel shirt and the brown wool and all that kind of stuff. But I want to say that I like Civil War Union Army because I do like a lot of fashions of the 1860s, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I don't know. I've just always been more of a civilian fashion kind of guy. So it's really hard to choose a military style that I like. I do I like nautical officers clothing. I can't stand enlisted nautical clothing. Um just because I always thought it looked kind of goofy with like the white suits or even before that like the white pants with the jackets. I never liked pre 20th century jackets. Um I like white and navy as a color combo but not with like the super short jackets. And but I do like officers outfits with the long frock coats and bridge coats and the white pants and the white canvas hats. So I do like that style, but I think World War One British uniforms might be my favorite. Robert Burns, I've never heard of him, but I'll Google him and take a listen. Um, might sound controversial in today's society, but I would say that the Victorian colonial style clothes look absolutely splendid. Pith helmets, especially. I personally find pith helmets kind of goofy looking, and I don't think I would ever choose to wear a pith helmet over any other kind of helmet. But I do like khaki. I'm not a big fan of like the shorts and tall socks. My grandfather was in the British Army in World War II. I'm not British, but he was Polish, but he was in the British Army and fought in Africa, and he had all that, the shorts with the tall socks and the khaki shirt with the pith helmet, and that to me, is just I've always thought it looks kind of goofy. Like I love khaki as a material. I like khaki pants, and like I can wear like khaki shirt, khaki pants. Like that combination is cool to me. That's like very, you know, um, Egyptologist kind of look, which I love. But pith helmets, shorts with knee high socks, just never did it for me. I don't know, but that's just my opinion. Would I prefer khaki or off white for colonial or summertime? I mean, my summer frock coat is it's natural linen, so it's like a tannish khaki-ish color. Obviously, it's not khaki because it's linen, but it is that color. So I do wear, and my uh lawn suit that I wear for Edwardian era summer clothing, that's like a cream off-white color as well. So I do wear that color, and those are the best colors for summer. So I suppose yes. It's definitely it's much better to wear light colors like that anyway in the summer. Uh, when you live in humid climates, just because it reflects the heat from the sun. That being said, like we were talking about fashions in other cultures at the time, summer fashion in dry climates, you'd probably want to wear darker colors as an exception to that. So, like in North Africa, you'd probably want to wear black just because it gets so cold at night. Or not, maybe not black, but darker colors. But in as far as Western fashion goes, yeah, that's what you wear in the summer. That's just what was worn. Um, what would sorry, the like button is in the way of all this stuff. Um, what would your job be if you lived in 1855? That's a very specific year. Um, but I think I'd probably either end up going to school or I would work in some sort of shop. Just because in the current day and age, I'm a salesman. I have a lot of experience in retail, and that's what I'm good at. So I might work in like a suit shop or haberdashery or any kind of store, really. Um, but that's really just that's what I'm qualified for. Or I would have gone to school. Talking about khaki, thoughts on safari outfits. I don't really know much about safari outfits other than that they're very similar to what my grandfather wore in uh, Montgomery's army. So, and I'm not much of a fan of that sort of style. I do, I mean, every now and then I'll get in a mood where I'm like, I'm kind of in like a African exploration kind of mood, like as far as my fashion goes, but I don't have really much of that kind of stuff. But it's more of like a momentary interest every now and then. Um, it's funny you mentioned you had Polish background. I thought with your long hair you looked like Peter Steele from Typo Negative. Must be the Polish blood. Yes. I don't know if I've ever been compared to looking like Peter Steele before, but uh, I didn't know he was Polish. I feel like I should have known that. Maybe I did know that. But yes, my like I'm less than a quarter Polish, but that's just because of marriage. My grandfather was 100% Polish, uh, and then he actually immigrated to the U.S. after World War II. Well, sort of after World War II. Um, But I don't know a whole lot about that side of my family though. But uh, props for the typo negative reference. All right, so I would say that's been a good hour. Fire away your last questions now if you have anything that you want to ask or say. Um, but I'm going to wrap it up shortly here. When it comes to safari, I never really thought of shorts that much, especially for the Victorian era. I was under the assumption that they mostly used boots and pants over shorts in the 1800s. I mean, I'm sure they wore a lot of puttees over their pants. I know that the concept of khaki was invented in the 1870s for the purpose of British African exploration. But I don't know when shorts specifically came about. Short pants have existed for a long time, and pretty much everything that we think of as modern has existed in one form or another long before we thought it did. For example, like the first pair of pants or the oldest pair of pants ever discovered is almost 3,000 years old. So a lot of this stuff has existed in other cultures or in other time periods before we thought we invented it. Um, but yeah, I'm sure that's what it mainly was, puttees and boots with khaki pants or with linen pants or with canvas pants. Um, but that's kind of like more of a momentary interest for me every now and then if I watch a movie or a video that gets me in that mood. But no, not really. Not much my thing. Um, but I would say let's start wrapping it up here. Um, I think that was a pretty good no, that went a lot better than I thought it was gonna go. Um, you guys seem to ask some pretty good questions, and I'm very happy with how this turned out. Let me know if you want me to do more of these. Obviously, as the ones that came and watched it, uh, you must have had some sort of initial enjoyment from it. So I don't know if I would get if anybody who didn't watch it would be more inclined to in the future. But let me know if you guys thought that this was a worthwhile sort of thing, and if I should do more of these. But I'm very happy with how this came out, and I think I don't know if I would do this regularly, but if we do them more, maybe like a couple times a year kind of thing. I think that could be fun for special occasions. But or let me know if I should go live and do like and cover a topic live instead of doing an edited video. I think that might be an interesting idea. But you guys let me know what you want to see. Because at the end of the day, the channel only exists because of you guys being here. If I didn't have anybody to preach to, I wouldn't be a preacher. So we'll just let me know what you guys think. So thanks for stopping by. I hope you guys had a good time. I hope you learned something either about me or about history. And I think we'll leave it at that. I'll see you guys in the next one.